It's ding ding, two men in a ring. We put pride in your stride and a quiver in your liver. You want 'em, we've got 'em, coming to you. Loud and proud, he's the biggest, he's the baddest. It's Mr. Gavin Davis on the Gavin Davis Podcast Show.
Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the Gavin Davis Podcast. Tonight's guest, he is a third-degree black belt in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu under Braulio Estima and Mauricio Gomez. He has competed from the years 2002 up to 2021 in Sambo, submission grappling, and Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, winning multiple events across the UK and Europe. In 2017, he set up Police BJJ. Then in 2020, he worked with the UK BJJA, Sport England, and National Police Sports Association to create Team Police BJJ for all UK forces. He is the chair for Team Police BJJ and UK BJJA Emergency Services. Me and Dave want to welcome to the podcast Mr. Tom Wilson. Tom, thank you for coming on, mate.
Gents, both, it's fantastic to be here. Thank you very much. Looking forward to having a good chat.
Yeah. And first question, straight into it, mate. How did you meet Mauricio? How did you meet Braulio?
Mauricio? Well, there's quite a large gap in terms of between me sort of first being involved with Mauricio and then again actually formally meeting him. So how I got into jiu-jitsu, I was initially playing rugby. I went to Swansea on a scholarship. Thought I'd be making a living playing rugby there. Suffered quite a serious back injury, which meant professional rugby would have been out, but I still needed that sort of contact sport environment. So I started getting into, I did Japanese jiu-jitsu, boxing, Kempo karate, various other bits and pieces. My local instructor, he ended up going in 1997 to some seminar in London with this strange guy called Mauricio Gomez. And from there, that pretty much set the direction of what we were doing. Our little gym, it grew to the point where we became affiliated through Mauricio with Braulio Estima. And I remained with Braulio up until, I think, second-degree black belt. And then we returned back to Mauricio. I think that would have been around 2020, I think. And yeah, so here we are now, third-degree black belt, quite a few years of jiu-jitsu later. And as I say, I mean, I've had fantastic opportunities, training with people like Mauricio, with Roger, with Braulio, with people, others all over the the UK and the world. And it's, as I say, the one thing that's just come across is just wherever you go, you walk into a jiu-jitsu gym, you're welcome, you may feel part of a family, and everybody just is able to pretty much go as hard as you like, but everybody walks away in one piece. That has been it's been the biggest takeaway for me of Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, is that people can train really hard together, but because of the nature of the sport, everybody walks away in one piece, and that's critical. The big difference I noticed there in all the other sports which I did was, you walked away and you had a few cuts, bruises, injuries, just in friendly sparring. But Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, just the nature of it allows you to commit 100% to what to a fight environment. But at the same time, you're both looking after each other, and you both finish your role, finish your session, and you're back to work. And that's the most important thing, isn't it? That it doesn't adversely impact on your life.
Yeah. So was that one of your first impressions of jiu-jitsu, was not only the camaraderie, but also the fact that this isn't breaking me every session?
It was breaking me mentally, in that I came into it from a background of being a professional rugby player, very fit, very strong, thinking I was, I'll be all right, against pretty much anybody. And my instructor, Lee Catling, I met him, and he was probably 20, 30 kilograms lighter than me. And every time I rolled with him, stand up or on the ground, after 30, 60 seconds, I couldn't breathe. It was, just the fact that he had that ability. He could apply jiu-jitsu so effectively that I was, absolutely nullified all my natural strengths. And I thought, I've got to learn how to do this. And obviously that was fairly much on the back of the UFC coming into the world. People being aware of, people like Royce Gracie, and what is this jiu-jitsu stuff? And I was finding out, what is this jiu-jitsu stuff? It was pretty good.
Yeah, because 97's really early doors in this country for Brazilian jiu-jitsu. I'm just thinking, where are you in the country?
So we're in sort of South End, Essex.
Essex, yeah, okay. Because I think I think Mauricio was in Birmingham originally, and then Braulio took Birmingham when
That was the
Mauricio
only,
moved further
that's
south.
right. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So I think, Mauricio was doing a few seminars around that time. He brought us some people in, including Braulio, and Mauricio said, Braulio, can you look after this little team? And we remained affiliated with Braulio and still remain, training well with him, to this day. So as I say, it's got that lineage that that we haven't seen anybody with our little team actually veer away and just remain part of all the same original crew. It's which is a nice feeling.
Yeah. Right, I'm going to bring Dave in, mate.
Thank you.
Hey, Tom. I wonder if you
Hi.
could tell us about the start of Police BJJ, and where did the idea for that come about, and how did you develop BJJ within the police?
Well, initially it was trying to just sell what BJJ was to the powers that be within the police, and a lot of them really struggled. A lot of that they were happy. Judo, they got it. Wrestling, they got it. To a degree, the very old variants of Japanese jiu-jitsu, they sort of understood it, but this new thing called Brazilian jiu-jitsu, that didn't land well. And it was quite a new concept, as you say. It's a relatively new arrival on the shores, so it took a lot of time. When I started with the police in 2003, and I immediately tried to implement it then, and it was just blocked at every session because they just couldn't grasp what that it was what you were saying it was. It very much appeared came across as something far more. They couldn't disassociate it with UFC and people fighting in cages, and that doesn't look good for policing. So the fact it took so long for it to develop to the point where people actually recognised it and thought, okay, yeah, this is actually a genuine, legitimate sport. It's well organised. It's safe. Yeah, we can work with it. So for me, I finally got to go ahead to set up the Met Police section in 2017. There were other clubs running before that, but what they all lacked and what we lacked was some sort of national governing body, some sort of national association. And because we didn't have that, most of the senior leaderships were very wary of, can we allow this to go on? So I gripped that and I thought, well, we need to have some sort of national association, some sort of governance, some sort of support. And that's where it started. And the way we've been able to do it is just by working with those key partners. So we've got our Police Sport UK, who basically say yay or nay to a sport. Sport England, who've actually, obviously just sign off all sporting activities, but most crucially, our national governing body, the UK BJA. And again, what they've done for us has been absolutely, beyond words. Their generosity, their support, just throughout the project, they gripped it. They recognised, yeah, we really want to help our emergency services. We really want to see a police association, and because of what they've done, we've got that framework. We've got that national governing body status. We're affiliated with them, and that allows me to go to any senior leadership team of any police force and just transparently demonstrate this is a legitimate sport. It's got insurance, it's got a framework, it's got terms of reference, it's got all the support mechanisms you're going to need, and that's what's allowed it to grow as well as it's done. But it's not me on my own. It's something which I'm a full-time officer, I'm a full-time inspector. I haven't got time to dedicate to solo operating a national association. So we've got a committee of officers around the UK, and they range from civilian staff all the way up to retired chief constables. So we've got a very diverse breadth of experience and skills, and we'll bring that together to enable us to help set up, develop, and empower other forces to run their own sections, their own teams, and that's where you see us now. We now have. There's 43 forces in England and Wales. Across the UK, that goes up to 48, and then with some affiliated policing agencies, in total we've got 52 separate organisations, and out of those we've got sections for 45 of them. And that's all occurred within the space since 2020 when we first set up. So we've recognised and been able to demonstrate the huge appetite there is for this sport. And again, that's been seen in some of our, particularly in the events we're able to run. The first Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu team police events, which we ran last year.
So has that been taken up by every police force, or is there still room to grow with that, Tom? I mean, presumably...
It requires people within that force A, who want to train jiu-jitsu, and B, who want to run their sections. And it seems like a big ask when when you first look at it. Anything new is a bit scary, but we provide everything. As a central organisation, as a central association, we provide them with all the knowledge that they need, all the directions that they need, and all the information which they need to sell to their senior leadership team and say, yeah, we're okay, we're happy with that as a police sport. So, and again, as I say, we've got 45 out of 52, and it's just a matter of the other ones, identifying leaders within their own groups and saying, yeah, well, let's run with that. But the national coverage in a space of 4 years, it is something which is not, I don't think it's not occurred in any police martial arts. And as, again, the volume of people we've got, volume of officers training, it dwarfs any other police martial art and most police sports. So we've really tapped into something.
So when you're trying to sell this to the powers that be, are you trying to sell it as a self-defense based art, so that when the police officers are on the street day to day, it will assist them? Because I know, like, I read an article ages ago, and they were saying that so many police officers get injured when they're on the beat because they only do like 2 hours a year self-defense, so that when they get into a confrontation, they end up getting injured a lot, and then if they're injured, they can't work, and then there's a shortfall in manning. So you trying to sell it from a self-defense point of view that'll help them on their day-to-day, or a sport point of view, or both? Because it must tick both boxes for them.
Right. Well, the overlap there is clear. You can see how one spills into the other.
Yeah.
But it has to be, it is, and has to be for a sports direction.
Okay.
In terms of any sort of the fact that it happens to it can be used to defend yourself, that's just an ancillary benefit. But we have to put it forward as a police sport for police well-being, physical, mental, and social. That's how it gets through the door. And everything else that we do is on that avenue. So any other projects we might have around Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu has to be sports focused, sports orientated, and that's why we've created this National Sports Association. That's the foundation and the support mechanism to enable everything else we want to do. We obviously recognise the fact that if you're any good at Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, you're probably going to be fairly safe, or a lot safer than you would be in a physical confrontation, and that is definitely something which we are working towards. But we have to present it purely at a sports level in order to make it acceptable in terms of what we're doing and how we're doing it, and the benefits. Yes, we're making people physically fitter, but if you train in jiu-jitsu yourself, you know how good you feel after you finish a session. Your mind is clear. I was training this this morning. I went in with a whole week's worth of stress logged right there. 2 hours later, I was absolutely serene, and that's reflected everywhere we go. Every force that does that, their officers come out and say, "My God, I just feel so much better after getting involved in this," and that's what we're achieving. That's what we're selling. The stresses that police officers are under, in terms of what they do on a day-to-day basis, they need some sort of means to calm this, and that's what the Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu environment provides. And also, it's a good means for them to, socially, for them to have a release, both physically and have a chance to have a chat on the mat, outside the mat, form new friendships, and that well-being angle is very much the direction that we take it.
Yeah, because I couldn't think of anything worse than breaking the law. Imagine this, Dave, breaking the law, and then someone gripping hold of you who's a 3rd-degree black belt in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. I couldn't think of anything worse.
Well,
Dave, I'll bring it back in, mate.
So, what proportion of your police force are currently training BJJ?
Well, I mean, again, in terms of police officers who are part of the team police sections, we've got 45 sections. We've got around 3,000 officers training within that. So if we look at that, we've got I think it's 171,000 officers in the UK. So it's under 2%. It's under 2%. But if you look at what it was in 2020 before we set up, it had been a couple of hundred. So we've gone in the space of 4 years from a couple of hundred to nearly 3,000 officers already involved. You can see the mushrooming effect. What we need, what our benchmark, our aspiration is to get ourselves up to 10%. If we get 10% of our officers training regularly, training to a good standard, then we'll be able to say this has real value. We need to look at it. We can push forward the other angles beyond just the sport, beyond just the well-being, beyond just all the social elements.
So I suppose that during a police officer's training, they'll have to learn restraint techniques. So is there an ambition that learning Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu as part of an officer's training could deal with a lot of the skills they would require on a day-to-day basis?
The way we're approaching that is not to step on or interfere with the existing status quo in terms of what officers are taught, but just to improve how they can do it. That's how Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu will help. It will make that be able to take what they're taught and be able to refine it and tweak it so they have so much more success with it. And that's exactly what we're trying to achieve and demonstrate at the moment, with the projects which we are running. So it's as we said earlier, that the officers that train twice a year, they're told certain techniques, they get some sort of grasp of them. But if you do something twice a year, if you ask to pass your driving test after doing 2 lessons, 6 months apart, you'd probably struggle, wouldn't you? In terms of having proficiency. But if you have an on-site team in your own police force that you can go to every week or as regularly as you can, and just constantly, just practice those same skills, those same techniques that you've been taught, but just refine them, familiarize yourself with them. You'll find yourself, you'll be using the techniques which you've been taught, the techniques which are accepted, but it's not about the techniques. It's the concept-based approach about understanding how you make these things work, what you need to do to make technique X, Y, and Z work. It's that conceptual approach that we apply. That is what's landing. That's what's making a difference, and that's what has to be done very delicately, so that we don't where the door's just ajar now, and we're slightly getting our nose through there. We have to be really careful working with all the partners that we are working with, not to overreach, we have to be absolutely firm when we are speaking with our officers and teaching our officers. You are not being taught this as self-defense, but what we're going to go through a certain technique which you may recognize, and you'll find yourself becoming far more competent at that particular technique, and that which you've been taught in your own training, and you'll find success with it. And for me, that's what that's going to deliver, not just the competence but the confidence. And if people have already got confidence that whatever they're using, whatever they've been taught, works, that exudes, that comes across. You're saying you wouldn't like to come up against a 3rd-degree black belt if you committed a crime. You wouldn't be in trouble, because that person would just look at you and talk to you, and the energy which they came across would tell you automatically that the fight option isn't even worth thinking about. You just want to comply, de-escalate, and everybody goes away in one piece. And that's what we're trying to get across. We want to get that confidence embedded so that we don't even need to use any force in the first place.
Yeah, I understand that. It's just that you always see on the internet, on YouTube, for example, when police officers are trying to arrest people who have broke the law, and then you can clearly see, I can clearly see the difference between people who are struggling in that environment, okay, because that person isn't just going to say, yeah, okay, take me. That they're resisting. So I can see the difference between people who are incompetent in that environment to someone who I would say from a blue belt up, but definitely a purple belt up, has got more skills. However, I totally agree with what you're saying, Tom, with regard to people having knives, people having weapons. You do want to escalate everything as much as possible, but it's not always always going to happen. But mixing in other martial arts, knowledge on other martial arts, it all comes together nicely. But like my opinion is that I think that a lot of forces, if they have most of their officers at a blue belt level, that is only going to help the sports side of things, and it's going to help the self-defense side of things massively.
Absolutely.
Yeah, definitely.
And that is the aspiration.
Yeah.
It's just like, if we can get, like I said, even 10% of our police force at that level, that they are that comfortable, that confident, that competent, in their own hands-on skills, and that they're conceptually aware enough that they can apply it in whichever is the agreed process at the time. But more importantly, that they've got that confidence that they don't need to, they can engage in physical act as the very last option.
Yeah.
They can read the scenario, they can look in front of them and think, okay, if I do need to go hands-on, I know I'm absolutely safe.
Yeah.
But because I know my skill level, I know where I'm at, I can read what's in front of me. If it's well beyond me, I'll just move back and we'll call more people in, and we'll make this safe another way. But if you're in that one-on-one environment where something has to be done, if you've got that level of competence and that confidence, and that just comes across when you're talking to somebody. And and even when they're up there, they're screaming, they're shouting, they're really angry, they're absolutely confident that that they're never going to come with you. But when you start talking to somebody and you can see in their eyes and their tone, their body language, that they are absolutely unfazed by this. They're not worried by your shouting, your screaming, your chest puffing. That starts to de-escalate. You see the levels go down to the point where we end up having a chat and saying, "Look, mate, we're going to have to sort this out. Come along," and everybody that gets dealt with without anybody getting hurt. And that's the whole point. It's about police officers staying hurt, but most importantly as well, the public staying safe. And it needs to. Everybody needs to be part of this equation. We need to consider everybody there. We don't want to get anybody getting hurt, and that's only achieved by having people who've got that confidence that comes through competence.
Yeah. I think doormen are very good at this, because I don't think they ever get the credit that they deserve, because they're dealing with people all the time who are drinking alcohol. And when people are under the influence of alcohol, they can be hard work. And then their first phase is de-escalate. So it's a similar type of scenario base, isn't it?
Very much. I was, before I was a police officer, I was a doorman for 7 years.
Right.
So I did exactly the same thing, and walking, into, pub fights, as a police officer, I very much, when I was first starting, switch straight into my, doorman phase. I'd start clearing glasses and ashtrays out of the way just to make sure that it was safe. And similarly, you talk to people in that calm level fashion, just saying, you do just learn those de-escalation skills. But not everybody comes into the police service with that experience. But a lot of people come in with no conflict history whatsoever, and it's the first time that happens can be quite terrifying. So it's ideally people will have acquired some sort of level of skill, some sort of level of experience of dealing with that before they arrive. But if not, then it's up to us within the police to make sure they acquire that. As they start training, they're with people who've already got those skills, so they can learn from them. And again, that delivers the end outcome that everybody stays safe, which is all we're trying to do.
Yeah. See, I'm trying to learn as much judo as I can at the moment, and I think I speak to Dave a lot about this, because Dave's well into his judo, and I find that judo it just doesn't ever get the respect it deserves with a lot of stuff. You know what I mean? Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu is massive, and it has been massive for a number of years now, but judo seems to fade away. But I find judo so hard to learn, and the crossovers between judo and basic self-defense, just by able to grip someone and control someone, very similar. Obviously, what we do in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu is massive as well. Have you got any judo experience? Did you do any bits of judo?
I was very fortunate in that my instructors were very, very competent judokas.
Right,
Their instructors, their gym, they had 4 Olympic level judokas there. So I incidentally picked up quite a decent level of judo without ever strapping on a judo gi.
Yeah.
So I've got a lot of respect for it, a lot of time for it. But I find if we have to differentiate between the sports, between the disciplines, I think that differences with judo and wrestling is that there's a huge resistance to being put on your back, isn't there?
Yeah.
That you don't, whatever happens, you don't want to go on your back. So
Yeah.
when you're being thrown, you're arching, you're sticking your arms out to stop it happening, and that's where the injuries can occur. Particularly in a non-dojo environment when
Yes.
people are stiff and resisting. Whereas with Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, you don't accept it, but you adapt it and accommodate it into your game, with the end aim still of being to, once you have gone down, you land safely, and then you get, reverse and get yourself into a better dominant position. So I think that's where we see the push for Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu having some merit to it, but the background, having wrestling and judo background as well, that they are so, as you say, underrated. Before we started the Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, our team police events, the only alternative was a wrestling, or a sort of freestyle wrestling event, and they were done annually, and you might see 20 or 30 people going to those, from all across the UK. Whereas now you see our events, and we have to cap our numbers at 150.
Yeah.
Because people, both from who do Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, who do judo, who do wrestling, who do all three, see that they can, whatever they do, they can incorporate it into the Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu framework. So you can take your skills, your own experience, put them to your advantage, and again test them in, like I said earlier, that safe environment.
Yeah, and it is definitely safer, because I feel as I get older, and as people get older, they're still able to train jiu-jitsu. Whereas with judo and wrestling, you don't see many people in their 40s or 50s,
You don't know.
wrestling, do you, or doing high level judo, because by then, it's the body's broken, isn't it?
It's taken a lot of hits.
Yeah.
And again, the nature of the sport, of those sports, is quite difficult to continue or adapt. My body I've got a lot of steel in me.
Right. Okay.
There's a lot of surgery gone on.
Is that from rugby?
So I have my spine fused. Well, I broke my back playing rugby, when I was quite young. I think I must have been 17, 18. Didn't actually realise I'd broken it until 20 years later, when it sort of fell apart. I took up strongman training just to complement, jiu-jitsu, and just picking up, doing the Atlas stones and the log lifts. That ended up, highlighting where I'd actually broken my back playing rugby. So I had to have that fused. And again, I've torn my hamstring out. I've had to have that reconnected. I've had I've been driven into a few times at work. So my knees are in quite a bad way now. But I've been able to adapt so that I'm still relevant. I can spar and train with anybody at any level, because I've been able to adapt my game. And if anything, it's actually improved my game. It's stopped me trying to use my own natural strengths, whatever they are, whether it be strength, power, fitness, and focus purely on technique. So in that sense, as you get older and as your body deteriorates just through time or through a circumstance, you can still train at a very high level in jiu-jitsu. I know there's a guy I started teaching a few years ago, and he's joined us at 74, and he was rolling around with 19 and 20-year-olds because of the nature of jiu-jitsu. He was able to do that and not injure himself. Can you imagine a 74-year-old stepping onto the mat, to do judo or wrestling, boxing, anything?
No.
It'd be one session, and and hopefully it'll be okay. But we do have that difference, that focus on safety and the natural, just the way we move around within Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, that allows the body to endure, survive, actually improve from it. So, I think that's where we see Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. That's why we see such a huge audience for it, because people recognise I can do it. I can be quite a tasty person, and I'll still be in one piece at the end of it.
Yeah, I agree. Dave?
I think just to comment on the judo, because I'm in love with judo. Basically, I think it's a phenomenal martial art. You lose the contest if you get thrown on your back, and that motivates a lot of people to try and spin out of it, and it can be quite dangerous. But if you're happy to take a break fall, it can be done safely. I think one of the reasons you don't see a lot of older people being very good at judo is just the explosive speed you require when you're attacking. And the intensity of the contest. It's incredibly energy demanding because every movement's a big movement.
Yeah.
I
Absolutely agree with you. Yeah, as I say, when I do step on the mat with a few judokas, and the energy is totally different. It's just it's so powerful. It's so absolutely life or death gripping. And that's what anybody's experience at jiu-jitsu is so different, so relaxed. So it all seems a bit funny, but you're just flowing. There's no there's no risk there, inherent through that tension. So as you say, if somebody older comes into that game and finds themselves, even just when you're going through your techniques, you find yourself facing that stiff arm, you find yourself, sorry, my elbow just cracked. You find yourself being pushed around. It's quite intimidating. And that's the thing. Walking through the door for the first time is the hardest thing, isn't it?
Yeah.
If you manage to get in for that first session and you get thrown around and intimidated by the nature of the sport, that's where you're not going to see people coming back. So it's when you enter a gym like jiu-jitsu, and it's very relaxed, very calm. The focus is looking after each other, and you don't see people, being injured or at risk of being injured by virtue of what we're doing and how we're doing it. It's that's why you get people walking through the door and then continue to walk through the door, irrespective of whether they're in their 20s, 50s, 60s, or older.
Yeah. Have you got anything else, Dave?
Yeah, well, there's a question I asked to a very senior judo player. He's a 6th dan in judo. He's a police officer. And I asked him, is there any time that your judo has been useful for you? And he said he's only ever used foot sweeps. But he said foot sweeps are very effective. So I wonder, Tom, has there been any occasions where you've used particular elements of Brazilian jiu-jitsu? And what's been your go-to?
Yeah, well, as I say, I mean, thinking of specific incidences, the sasai, a foot sweep, for me, I found myself, naturally using that. That's something which, I can think of an incident, I had a chap who's, a little upset with me, and he pulled a couple of weapons out at me. And my instinctive reaction was just to, just grab the collar and arm, do the sweep, put him on his back and straight into the knee on belly, disarm and handcuff. So for me, that was a very simple proof of concept in that it can work. And I was safe, the other person was safe, nobody was injured, and it looked safe. It didn't look, like anybody was ever at any risk. It gave the impression that the officer knew what he was doing, and it was clear that nobody was at risk throughout the engagement, apart from me initially. In terms of other things, again, you talk about brake falls. When I've been run over, a car's drive straight into me. The most important thing, was the fact I was able to brake fall quite comfortably, on the concrete when I landed. Although I was, I've got sort of some legacy injuries in my knees as a result. If I'd not known how to land properly, back of my head would have been cracked against the pavement, and it might have been a different story. So so there's a lot of different angles there. But again, I think the technique I use most, again, is confidence. Generally, when I'm confronting somebody, I can look them in the eye, and they get the visuals, the tone, the body language. It speaks volumes straight away. Plus, I've got the physical attributes. My nose is on one side of my face, my ears are all scrunched up. It does give an initial impression. Maybe I'll pick on somebody else. So the visuals do make a difference.
Yeah, project confidence.
Yeah, that's it.
Project confidence.
And that doesn't always, even if you are carrying a few war wounds, that's not always you won't naturally be confident with it. You'll only be confident if you've spent enough time on the mat, pressure testing yourself, and equally finding circumstance beyond your control where you've been able to demonstrate a similar level of confidence, in a live scenario.
Yeah.
and the balance is not allow, you know, the trick is not to allow it to move into overconfidence, to think, oh, I can deal with anything, because none of us can deal with everything. But we can look at what's in front of us, and we can make a good assessment of it. And still, our number one aim is everybody, if we can, walks away in one piece.
Yeah, yeah. What I want to ask you about from reading your bio is your competition experience.
Yeah, yeah.
So you competed for over 20 years.
Yeah.
21 years, I think I read, and you did the Pan Ams. You've done some big events.
Yeah.
Any good memories from them, Tom?
I know one event. Again, it was a UK-based event. It was one of the Grappler Showdowns. Most of my competition experience would have been sort of 2005 to 2015. So the Grappler Showdown, and I did in my own weight category. I ended up fighting Alex Reed, who at the time was quite a big name in cage rage.
Was he with Jordan then, was he? Or Katie Price, I should say.
I don't think at the time. No, I think that was probably pre those times.
Yeah.
So I fought and beat him, and then in the absolute, I fought Brad Pickett, and and that was a really good fight. Although there was a size differential, I probably had at the time I was a lot slimmer, but I was still probably 10 kilos more than him. But he was in UFC fighting age, and we spent the entire match backs and forwards, both of us trying for takedowns, and in the end, it was just right at the very end. I just managed to get the takedown and get the win. And for me, that was a good day's work. Good memories against people who are very competent. And what I enjoyed most, again, I had a good chat with them both afterwards. We both spoke, and we both exchanged stories, and and that was that's probably the most enjoyable thing I've taken away. There's a couple of guys who I've competed against. If somebody competes regularly, you'll always find somebody else who you run into. As you move through the belts, as you go through the years. And the guy I used to compete against within jiu-jitsu was a guy called Matt Norris, who's I think in the Channel Islands. Here I am 5'9", there he is 6'6", 6'7". So it was always I'm going for a double leg, and he'd always pull guard and try and triangle me. And we knew the story from start to finish, from blue all the way up to to the end belts. But again, really good friendship, always laughing and smiling before, after, during the matches. I don't think there was ever any match which I felt I was angry about. I think the only one I was angry about was I fought in, can't remember which open it was, but I fought in a semi-final against a guy who was I think a Bulgarian national champion wrestler. Managed to beat him. Put my hand up, and suddenly felt a bit of soreness in my leg, and looked down, and my toes had been torn to pieces. And tried the best to strap them up and get them ready for the for the next fight for the final. But it was just I was just really, oh man, I could have come away with a really good feather in my cap for that one. But again, injuries happen, part and parcel of competition. And a few broken toes is minor in comparison to some of the other things which happen.
You made an interesting point there. You said that about not getting angry and that in competition. I agree with you there, because I can never remember in any comp that I've done being angry. I can remember being disappointed with myself, but I can't remember being angry. So I think that's an important thing to just.
You can't go into a competition angry. It's totally the wrong energy.
Yeah.
I used to go in massively confident. I used to go in, having already told myself and anybody who'd listen, I've won this. I'd step onto the mat and tell the ref and tell the table, you might as well give me the goal now, I've won this. And, it came across as cocky. It came across, massively.
Psychology, though.
Yeah.
Psychology.
In my own head, I've planted, I am winning this. I am winning this. Even if you're better than me, I'm still winning this.
Yeah.
And that worked a couple of times against people who did have my number. I would find a way to just escape from a bad position, get back on top, get my point position, and come away either with a sub or with a decision at the end. And as a competitor, that was the key thing, and I think that was something which I brought from rugby. That you had to have the absolute confidence and the belief in yourself and the commitment to win. You don't. you're not looking for a silver medal. You're going on there to perform and take that gold, aren't you? And
Yeah, you are. Yeah.
most of the medals that I've got, are the right colour. Yeah, I don't mind having a couple of silvers here and there, but I've got a good haul. They're all sitting in a plastic bag. I haven't really looked after that very well. That's
Oh, you
something
want to get a trophy cabinet and put them all up?
I do
Yeah.
need to do it properly, but yeah. As I say, it's
The way I've always looked at it as well is if if I've lost, or even if I won, to be fair, and there's something I've been happy about, just on Monday when I go back training, I'm going to work on what I was disappointed with.
Yeah.
And just take that forward,
It's all learning. You're constantly learning. You're constantly, and again, that's the great thing about the game. It's I will never know it all, because everything which if I develop a new technique and I find this works really well, I will. The first thing I'll do once I'm satisfied with it is teach it to everybody I know, so they know how it works, and they find a way to dismantle it and beat me, and then I've got to keep learning more and improving it. It's you can never sit still. I think that is a big difference and an advantage to Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. It's that constant evolution, as opposed to a rigid set of a list of techniques, which may not be allowed to be veered away from. I think the fact that we positively encourage that growth, change, improvement, find something good from over there, something that doesn't work for here, well, let's get rid of it. And it's just picking and choosing what works, and putting it together in a way that's within a framework of what we're doing.
Yeah, I always say to Dave, you can't run fast if people aren't chasing you. And the thing is, when I go training on Monday, when it's sparring time, everyone's there ready to go.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? They're lined up and they're like, right. And then you can't dodge anyone. You can't do that. So, Dave, is there anything you want to say to Tom before we start looking at bringing the podcast to a close, mate?
I've just found this a really interesting chat. I think it's going to be a great podcast. Thank you very much, Tom, for coming on.
No, David, I really appreciate it. And again, your insights around judo, bang on. I totally agree. For me, that's, if I had the opportunity at the time to have done more, that's that's something which I would have spent time with. And again, it's something which I think very much has its place. In the overlap between sports and self-defense.
Yeah, I wish I would have done it as a kid, judo. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I really do. It's so hard for me to pick it up now. It really is. But I'm doing my best with it. And every week, as long as I learn one thing a week and I can develop that, I'm happy. You know what I mean?
That's it. You just keep adding, as there's so much there. But again, my instructor Lee, he constantly tells us a story about he had this Japanese judo player who used to come to his gym in the 80s, and this guy spoke very little English, and all he had was his one throw. I think it's the Haragoshi, and he would line everybody up, and everybody knew exactly what throw he'd be doing, and the message was, within 30 seconds you'll be I'll have thrown you, and that didn't matter whether it was somebody who just started or any of the 4 Olympians, at the club at the time. So it's the thing is, this guy, he only knew one throw. He only knew his this one Haragoshi, and all he did was when asked about his training routine and asked to demonstrate any other throw, he just looked at you like this. All I do in the morning, I do 10,000 reps. Then during the day, I do another 10,000, and then the evening, I do another 10,000. And that was all he did, that one throw. So it's important to be aware of the other throws, learning more, but find what works for you and become perfect at it. And that's I think that's the message. And particularly applying that into jiu-jitsu. If you can find something that works for you, and then that sets you up to do everything you want to do on the ground, that makes you quite an impressive player.
What's the future for Team Police BJJ?
More. As I say, we want to see more officers, more involved. If we can get to that 10% number, that's really that gets people's eyes open. They already are. People are talking now. Our last championships event in December that we did, that held that at Cheshire Police Station, right, their HQ, and we had their chief constable there, and he was opening it and he was observing it, and he really liked what he saw. And again, that just people at that level, when they start talking, it really starts opening more doors and more conversations, and it allows us then to do what our main aim is which is to work more with the civilian Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu Association. We're well placed within that, in that we've got the support of UK BJJ. We've got our other partners. Real do massive work for us, as they do for the military.
Yeah.
And, and it's just bringing everybody together so we can all benefit. We can all work towards each other's individual projects, but we're also mindful about the individual parameters of each individual organisation. As I said, there is, although the military and the police seem parallel organisations, they are very different. So when we all work together and we're able to see each other's perspectives, we can all then I can work in that way to support that organisation. But I've got to be mindful of X, Y, and Z, because things are slightly different there. We're really working as much as we can with as many other providers as we can, to just broaden the scope of our influence and just get more people involved and more awareness of what we're doing. And for us, that's the aim: more people, more partners, more collaborators, and more success.
Brilliant. Tom, thank you for coming on the podcast, mate. It's been a pleasure having you on.
Thank you, Gavin. And thank you, David.
Thank you. Good night, everyone.
All right, cheers all.